going to talk about my book 1961 and the characters. But before I do that, I have to show the crux of the book. The crux of the book that leads into the book 1963. And the crux is the nuclear threat. Nuclear threat by terrorists. Terrorists that target American cities simultaneously. The main character for this terrorist attack is Carlos Sánchez. Carlos Sánchez, who began his career with Castro and the anti-Castro Cubans in the late 50s and early 60s, who reappears with terrorists from around the world to target his archenemy, the United States. Let's go to our main character, Patch Kincaid. Patch's background is that his father was in the military and stationed in Atsugi, Japan, and he worked on the U-2 project in the early 60s. Patch was hit in the face with a baseball, which caused him to wear a patch for a few days, but the name stuck. Patch Kincaid is like Telemachus in the Odyssey. Patch's journey begins inauspiciously. He's on his way to San Francisco through the Rocky Mountains. In San Francisco, he'll meet his fiancée, Kate, and present her with a diamond ring for their engagement. Other events are taking place. The intelligence wires are buzzing with possible terrorist activity and nuclear bomb threats. Patch's beautiful, well-orchestrated scenario with musicians and champagne in Golden Gate Park overlooking the bay in San Francisco is disrupted, and he and Kate have to leave for Hastings Mountain in Colorado, the site of the old NORAD command in Colorado, inside a mountain. One of the things I should say at the beginning of this book, it's an alternate time period. JFK is alive in 1986. JFK is hosting a radio forum where he can talk to people like former President Richard Nixon and others in the most popular radio show in the United States.
About what the foreign policy of the United States should be. We need to make it clear we should be the force of the world, we should strive for peace, work together with emerging governments. Yeah, well, that's all well and good. We need to stand up to our enemies. Do you have any idea what this means? Yes, I've had a few years of public service. We should have taken the general's advice and bombed Cuba during your administration and started World War III.
I don't claim to say that that's what would have happened to JFK. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is JFK is alive in another scenario. And what's going to happen in this book is going to cause other things to happen. Carlos Sanchez's brutality is shown right away in how he just blows away somebody who didn't cooperate with him in New Jersey. The pillar of this book, the man of substance who really is the authority, the scientist, the person with the moxie is Ray Meinkewitz. Ray Meinkewitz runs the facility monitoring time travel from Hastings Mountain in Colorado. As Carlos Sánchez and his terrorists attack Hastings Mountain, nuclear bombs go off in cities around the United States. Meynkewitz's only alternative is to send Patch back in time by only a few weeks or maybe a month to prevent the horrific attack on American cities by terrorists. However, what happens is a little bit different than anticipated. Because of the attack by Carlos Sánchez, the facility is not functioning at full force. Patch and Kate are sent back to 1961. They're separated but later come together. Patch's first inkling is to get to the old Meinkewitz back in 1961, and he finds Meinkewitz at Barton College outside of Washington, D.C. Meinkewitz doesn't believe his story, but eventually, as Patch talks about the future and certain information that he has about Meinkewitz, Meinkewitz becomes convinced and brings him to the intelligence operatives in D.C. Agents Willis and Luntz do represent real characters. At this juncture in Patch's saga, I didn't want to plug in a whole bunch of meaningless, non-historical information. Instead, I used the characters based on other characters in real life. Patch is flown to Miami. His real mission is to kill Carlos, because back in 1961, the only way to stop that attack in the future, in 1986, is to kill Carlos Sánchez, who is working both sides, the Castro government and the anti-Castro Cubans. Patch is flown to a training facility in Nicaragua, but he suffers great interrogation with CIA. But they are still unable to get him to break his story because it's true. He also makes contact with certain mafioso people whom he does help out with certain information and certain things that he does in Cuba. Patch is actually flown into the Bay of Pigs with Meinkewitz. His mission is to kill Carlos Sánchez, and it's the mafia who have got him that flight into Cuba. My Bay of Pigs scenario involves Patch, Meinkewitz, and a sergeant named Savage, fictitious, on the ground as the attack begins. This is well researched in that it is accurate in its time frame and with the equipment that is used as Patch moves through this invasion and is around this invasion to kill Carlos Sánchez. However, he's unable to do it and is captured by the Castro government, and he and Meinkewitz are behind the scenes with the Castro government and the prisoners taken at the Bay of Pigs invasion. After the capture, Patch and Meinkewitz make an escape attempt utilizing one of the government operatives there who are loyal to the anti-Castro people. They chase Carlos Sánchez through the Cuban countryside to a dam on the edge of the country. And in that huge dam, Carlos Sánchez is confronted. Meinkewitz ends up shooting and killing him only after Patch is brought back in time. And I should speak about this retrograde. Retrograde is the ability to go back in time like an elastic, but the elastic is always pulling back at the person back in time. And when the retrograde is pulling back, everything slows down. There are certain parameters where you can walk through a city and nobody sees you because you're in a different type of dimension. It allows you to see exactly what's going on from a different point of view. Patch is retrograded back into the 2000s, and he ends up in Liberty Park in New Jersey. There he finds, with the museum across the way, that the buildings of the World Trade Center were taken down. He wonders whether he caused that or had anything to do with it. We really don't know. But what we do know, when Meinkewitz arrives, a lot older than he was in 1961, and announces what happened, Patch is stunned, because John F. Kennedy was killed on November 22nd, 1963, in Dallas, Texas.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route. There's numerous people running up the hill alongside Elm Street, there by the Simmons Freeway. Several police officers are rushing up the hill at this time. Stand by just a moment, please. Something has happened in the motorcade route. Stand by, please. Parkland Hospital, there has been a shooting. Parkland Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound. I repeat, a shooting in the motorcade in the downtown area. Parkland Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound. The President's car is now going past me. The limousine is now traveling at a very high rate of speed. Secret Service men standing up in the limousine. They are armed with submachine guns. It appears as though someone in the limousine might have been hit by the gunfire.